I'm calling this here a strange astrology title. We're going to use astrology today. A year to accelerate your awakening. And here we are. Those of you who have followed some astrology, anybody, were you prepared for the cardinal grand cross, the cardinal square? Did you see some literature that was coming out ahead of time for this? What kind of expectations and predictions? And well, thankfully, they haven't happened in that worst case scenario. And you know, one of the things I've learned over the years, as my friend Scott will testify, you can't really predict as well as we think we can with astrology. You can point, but you can't predict. It's just I was thinking of this in terms of, you know, looking at all the history. Oh, 1793, the French Revolution, this kind of astrology was coming down. Oh, and you go back and think about historical. But here's a picture I found on the internet that kind of portrays it, maybe. This is not an accurate picture, but just picture what it is. Imagine all the different kinds of movements. We're just standing here. We're sitting. We're practicing stillness. But do you know how fast the Earth is rotating around on its axis? You're going 1,000 miles an hour just sitting here, just spinning. We're all whirling dervishes, whether we want to be or not. And do you know how fast the Earth is going around the sun on its orbit? So we're going 1,000 miles this way. This sun, not a clear depiction, moving this way 50,000 miles an hour approximately. It's rounded off. We're moving 50,000 miles. And then do you know how fast the Milky Way is moving around the universe? They predict, expect, project somewhere near 500,000 miles an hour. So we're sitting in stillness. There's really quite a bit of movement. But it's also spiraling. This never comes back. We are all exploring new space together. We have this, it never comes back. The planets, as they go around, they don't go around, they spiral because we have this body of movement in front of us, right? Now, here is the astrology for this moment, 3:45 at Sun Valley here. And this is the astrology of today. And here, this is the remnants of what's called a grand square. Now, in astrology, when we're talking about the planets, the closer in, they're more related to the personal. So if I talked about your sun, it's really quite a bit about your personality and about the moon. But when you get out to the outer planets, Uranus has an 84-year orbit, Neptune 165, Pluto 250. So we call these transpersonal planets, meaning they're not about you, they're about we. They're things that are happening in our collective psyche. And that's one of the things that got me so interested in astrology back in the late 60s, was just this model of consciousness. Now, if we use it to predict, it doesn't work so good, but if we use it to point. And by the way, I've never seen one astrology aspect, now over 40 years of astrology, that I haven't seen somebody do a good job with. There is no astrology aspect that, oh boy, that's really bad. Only bad things can happen. No, it's just energy. It's within us that makes it so. So this is the fabled grand square. Can you see it? Pretty graphic, isn't it? This, or called the cardinal cross. And very graphically presented. We have Pluto square Uranus. Now that's been going on since 2012. In my talks the last few years, we've been talking about this very revolutionary period of time that we're in, right? Upheaval. And this will harken back to previous cycles. But here, Uranus in Aries is that hunger, that independence within all of us to do what I want to do when I want to do it in an uninhibited free way. And then Pluto is in Capricorn, and basically that's the structure that we've inherited, the culture that we inherited, the rules, the system that says, well, you can't because, and here's the rules of the game. Now, when I thought about this revolutionary period of time, I'm not a news person in terms of using astrology, like, how's that going to manifest? Because that, to me, is the opposite of wellness. It's anxious making, to me. It makes me anxious. Well, what's going to happen then? Well, what's going to happen then? And we know from all of our work that our work is about becoming present, right? Getting here now. So we have to be mindful of using our astrology in a way not to take us out of the now, but to help us enhance. But now, this year, and it's been January, and it will be through July, or at least through June, that this is still going to stay in effect. Jupiter moved into Cancer, and Mars is in Libra. Now, the dynamic of this, I'm calling it a vortex of energy. And that's what I was preparing for, a spinning vortex. How's this vortex going to manifest? Boy, have we heard that word a lot in weather and different kinds of issues. Now, all four elements are being activated. We're all being pulled in all four different areas every day. Ideally, our life is moving pretty quick. These are cardinal signs. That's dynamic. It's change. I don't think we should wait for change. This is a time of astrology. You want to initiate change. You want to get proactive with change, not wonder, oh, I hope things don't change. Well, they will, and they are, and quickly. Now, the Mars in Libra usually will only spend 2 months in a sign. Here it's 7 months because it went retrograde. So we have this 7 months period instead of 2 since January all the way through June. Now, the dynamics of this are very intense and volatile. And this peaked, by the way, April 22nd, 2014. So we're now a month past that. We're still in the vortex, but we didn't blow the world up. You know, maybe we are going to be. Maybe humanity is doing some good things. Maybe our oneness work and our work that we're all doing on each other is having some impact. I believe that it is. One thing I would say, though, in this period of time, you don't want to get caught up in somebody else's bad day. This is pretty reactionary astrology. Fraser, can you relate? Can you relate? So, on the day that this was going on, I was going to a kid's soccer game. It was a big tournament. One of my grandchildren was at a soccer tournament. There wasn't any place to park. Parents are all around, so you know, you find the littlest places. And I know I was parking by Braille, you know, but I was gentle Braille. And I touched, you know, to find where I'm at and squeezed in. Next thing I know, my window is shaking like a earthquake. Boom, boom, boom. You know, a big burly guy there. He's looking at me like, what? You know, and he said, you touched my car. Well, I think I did. But let's go look at it. And he said, okay. And he couldn't find anything because it was literally a touch. But he said, okay, but just watch out, buddy. And I thought, wow. That's what I mean. Don't get pulled into somebody else's bad day. Isn't it out there? Isn't there volatility? And if we're aware of this, it could be helpful to realize that, because the reactionary is, I'm frustrated and you caused it, right? That's when we project our stuff out to other people. I'm frustrated, you caused it, whoever you are, whoever I am. And that dynamic is dangerous. But here, this is the summer solstice coming up. And, no, excuse me, that isn't, that's the 60s. This is the 60s chart. This is the 60s again. Notice these two planets right there. They're both at the same degree. That's Uranus, Pluto, and then Saturn opposition. The 60s was one of the most dynamic, intense, energetic, revolutionary periods of time. And it wasn't just lifestyle, it was across the board, from feminism to environmental issues, to civil rights, to exploring consciousness, to looking at relationships in whole new ways. And anytime that you look at a current transit, like this is a cycle, it's not just a random square that all of a sudden got dealt us. No, it's part of a cycle. And that cycle is now, those two are right together, as we saw in the 60s, and now they've come to their dynamic point of tension at this point of making what I'll call karmic adjustments. It's a collective karmic adjustment cycle in the language I like to use, of where is it that some of the directions that we're going need some correction, some course correction. People sometimes ask me, is this like the change of the ages? When's the dawning of the age of Aquarius? Speaking of the 60s, that's when that song came out. But you know, when you hear about the change of the ages, it's because the Earth is tilted on its axis, about 26 degrees. And it describes an arc. It takes 26,000 years for that arc of our North Pole to go around what's called the Great Year, right? So that's what creates the ages. Each age is about 2,144 years long, approximately. So do you want to know when the change of the ages is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thursday, about 2:32. No, it's not going to be on any Thursday. The line is so broad. When you have 1,000-year, you paint the line between the ages, it encompasses our whole life. We are the transition crew. That's what we're doing here. We were raised in one belief, one set of beliefs and attitudes and ways of living on the planet that most of us in this room don't adhere to or aspire to or care to pass on to our children, right? Every generation would go through that. Sure, that's a generation gap, should be, that there's an evolution. But let's just think about some of this shift in the ages. We can call it from the Aquarius age, from the Pisces age to the Aquarius age. One, we are moving from the savior-victim era. Pisces and Virgo are not just savior and victim, and lots of beautiful themes. But haven't we seen that, the savior-victim? We have the few special spiritual people, and special spiritual people kind of, as we move into the Aquarius age, it's us. It's just a bunch of us. And all of a sudden, we're starting to know what we all know. The information's getting out there so fast that we're all telling the similar stories. The stories I heard this weekend were different in vernacular, but not content. We're moving in a definite direction in terms of understanding. We could say that we're moving from the materialistic era of recognizing that, well, maybe it's not just all about acquiring things and stuff, and that we're moving to an era of consciousness, understanding consciousness. That's part of our talk today. This awakening that we're going through. We'll talk about awakening to what? But hasn't the background emotion in the era that we've been in, I don't want to call it patriarchy, because then I have to call this next era matriarchy or something. And I got 4 sons. We have to, the language is awkward that we have, but I'm still going to use it. In the patriarchy, fear, scarcity, lack, oh my, fear, scarcity, lack, oh my. Do we hear that drum? Is that beating every day? There's not enough. There's too many of us. There's more coming, and there's going to be less stuff. That's the news. Tune in at 11 o'clock to find out the latest depletion, shortage, fear, scarcity, lack, oh my, right? And it's led to the most unhealthy way that is also justified in terms of living on a planet that we can imagine, survival of the fittest. It's a terrible way to live on a planet. It's not anything that any of us believe in. It's not something we aspire to. It's not what we want. So as we shift from what? As we shift from fear, scarcity, lack, I'm not saying it's going to happen tonight or tomorrow, but hasn't Panache and our other teachers that we've had, love, abundance, allow. What if that was a background emotion that you woke up with? rather than fear, scarcity, lack. Survival of the fittest. Only some of us are going to survive. The rest of you won't. It's a race to the cookies. Let's go. It's just an unhealthy way. It doesn't breed wellness. We're at a wellness festival. And that whole inbred reality that we've gone through. So moving from fear, scarcity, lack to love, abundance, allow. And changing in the way that we interact with the world. And I'm giving the punchline to a symbiotic cooperative engagement. And usually when we're not in that place of awakening, we're interacting with the world in terms of me. I need this. I need help. I want this. What can I get? What can I direct? So awakening, I'm describing, accelerate your awakening, shifting from a thought-based entity to an awareness-based entity. Have we heard this lately? What does this mean? A thought-based entity that we can figure it all out. Finally, if we get enough information, if we get enough data, get enough facts, right? And we're going to move to an awareness-based entity. Awareness, how do you achieve awareness? It's there, isn't it? It's always been there. Awareness is that place in you when you were 10 years old and were aware of how you were feeling that day. And it's the awareness place within us hasn't aged, hasn't got sick, it's still what it is. And check it out. I do often when I think about these topics. I go out in the morning and check. Does it still look like it did when I was 10? Yeah. From these eyes, from my place of that I'm aware from, that hasn't changed, shifted, tainted, darkened, nothing. It's just still there. Still as much mystery and intrigue as it was then. So we're shifting, and how will that change things for us? Well, Rumi had a great one. Sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. I mean, when you think of the 4 elements in astrology, fire, earth, air, water, and we've been talking a lot in our workshops over the weekend about water, about embracing our feelings and whatnot. But that's really not been part of the patriarchal era. Emotions get in the way of productivity, you know. So, so this sell your cleverness. And if it was just smart people that it took, well, we know it isn't, right? We all have very smart friends who are working at being healthy, the same as we are. They're not further behind, they're not further ahead. So apparently it's not just in our ability to think. Now, this is going to be tough for me. I came up with so many clever ideas to help us move out of our cleverness. I'm an idea guy. I sell my words. And now we're moving into an era where, well, it's not going to be so much about words. It's not going to be just about what we think, learn, gather next. Not that that's inappropriate, but we're going to need. Thank you. So this shift is often thought about in terms of the 2 axes of time. Horizontal time, linear time. What are you doing tomorrow? Where were you yesterday? How old are you now? What are you going to do? Where does this lead to? How's your IRAs for retirement building? Are you planning? This, most of us spend a lot of time on, right? And we're told that that's the part of our character that does take us out of the vertical time, which is in now. Vertical time is when we step out of that and we're aware. And we cultivate that awareness of the timeless part of our being. We are timeless beings experiencing a time-bound reality, as Fritjof Capra said that. But isn't that a beautiful statement? That we are timeless beings experiencing a time-bound reality. When we get in touch with our health and well-being, we're starting to get in touch more with that timeless part of our character. Thoughts, thoughts, thoughts. And we were talking last year, some of the fun awareness. 50,000 thoughts a day is what each of us generally think in any given day. 50 to 75,000 thoughts a day. Which of those are you going to believe? Which of those are you going to follow? Which of them aren't helpful at all? Is your mind like my mind? My mind is shameless. I bet yours is too. It's shameless. It will come up with any story, anywhere, anytime, to serve, I don't know what need, but I often thought, gosh, what a great vehicle it would be for consciousness growth if we could have monitors installed overhead, which showed a video monitor of my thoughts to you, not to me. So you can always see what each other is thinking. I mean, in truth, that would probably clean up our act a lot, wouldn't it? I mean, wouldn't that do it if we really thought, or this cute cartoon I saw on the internet. If thought bubbles appeared over my head, I'd be screwed. And it's true, because our minds are shameless. We can be so spiritually aligned and come up with such tacky stuff. So what have we been doing? We've been trying to find in the material world the smallest thing, the biggest thing. We're going to find the thing, right? And what are we finding with things? What did Einstein tell us? There are no things, just energy, different patterns of energy. And it's the energy field around a thing that is its defining, he called it its governing agent. The energy field is the governing agent of what appears to be our form. Now, I think that's going to work out way good for us in the wellness movement, because we do know how to get in touch with our energy field, don't we? And that is what life coalesces around, and that is what we're teaching. So what are we finding out there? Mostly just empty space. 99.999999999% of you is nothing. Or you, or me, or this, or anything. That's the truth. I mean, there's not much matter. As they say, well, clearly, whatever matter is made of, it's not matter. So we're understanding this has been, for me, very interesting. I've always enjoyed the Tao Te Ching. And we talk a lot about emptiness and the Tao that can be named. It's not the true Tao, the naming, the thinging kind of a thing. But that same, as I sit with that emptiness, it's very helpful for me. I think, gosh, it's that same emptiness as I meditate on that. In all my cells, there's 99% space. And if I meditate on that, that space actually is the same empty space that flows through you and all of creation. That is the connecting web. Now, in the male era, in the patriarchal era, we went by all of that, and said, well, there's nothing there. There is no thing there. And so in the era that we were just leaving, that was a perfect reason to discount it. It's empty. So that we're trying to define something with a part of our character. It's always changing, always. But what hasn't changed? That emptiness, that consciousness itself, the awareness. So to me, what this revolution is that we're moving into is this awareness that, whoa, oneness, existence is expressing through all of creation. It's sensory gathering agents. We are cells of consciousness in the greater being of existence. And existence going throughout everything, gathering information, discovering. And each of us have the freedom then to discover what with that. That's the gift. Creation's gift to you is your capacity to think. Your gift to creation is what you choose to think about. Capacity, God's gift to us, we could say, is your ability to feel. But then what's our gift back? What is it that we are offering back, right? And that's what I think that we're doing, is becoming more, each of us in our individual work. I think Panache said earlier that it doesn't, you don't have to wait for the world to change. We change ourselves, and we can change the world. So thinking about this energy, this vortex, vortex, vortex. Pluto in Capricorn, 2008 till 2023. 2008, just after Pluto in Capricorn moved in, that was the boom, the collapse of the bubble when Pluto was in Sagittarius of speculative possibility, maybe it's gonna. I don't want to judge that sign, some of my best friends are Sagittarians. But, including myself, of course. But Pluto in Capricorn is reminding us, like, yeah, but is it real? Is it real? Is it sustainable? Is it sustainable? So we've been talking about that. We've all been choosing to move in a life that's more sustainable in our individual economies, in our collective economy, in our individual lifestyles. But as I've been thinking about this, sustainable, first we just, functional would be good. You know, sustainable, yes, that's something to aim for. But don't, in our lives, don't we just need to get functional? And don't we want our lives to be functional first? And so when I was thinking about this vortex and all the images that came to me, one of the fun images that came to me was the 4th of July pinwheels that we get. And, you know, they spin and they get that momentum and they create that brilliance by casting off their spent fuel. And to me, in order to get functional, we first have to cast off that which has been dysfunctional in our lives. Excellent use of this energy, this spinning vortex, centrifugal force energy. Isn't your stuff coming up? Isn't everybody's stuff coming up fast, quick? And it comes quick, right? Because we bob in and out of these favorite places, and then we bob right back down to our... Yeah, we were joking last year, so I'll just repeat it. Enlighten today, asshole tomorrow. Can't you relate to it? I mean, I sure can. Some days I can be so honorable in my path, and my heart, and my love, and the next day such a jerk. But isn't that the truth for all of us? I mean, it's not like a permanent state. You make a shift, and okay, I changed my mind, like I changed my jacket. No, it's a process, isn't it? So we're bobbing. But this part, casting off that which is dysfunctional, in order to keep moving in your life, in order to evolve. What's dysfunctional? Some of it's our thoughts, some of it's our patterns of being, some of it's stuff that we have, accumulated stuff. Sometimes it's people. Ouch. Ouch. Sometimes there's people that we get around that we're so much caught up, they're so much caught up in their wound, their pain body, and their pain story that when they see you, their pain stories trigger. And sometimes it's healthy just to create some space so we don't create more karma, more wounds, right? So this casting off all of this, well, we've been liking the Buddhism, of course, and he teaches us that it's all a bunch of dukkha out there. I think he might have said it more poetically. But that is the first law. In life there is dukkha. Dukkha means, well, it's been over-translated as suffering. I think the original word just meant dissatisfaction. And there is the suffering that comes from getting old, illness, dying. That's part of dukkha. But there's also just the dissatisfactions that the happy moments don't last. It was great, and then it's not. I was so, and then I'm back in the. So this vortex of energy, your life is spinning fast. Isn't it spinning fast? What's it spinning around? That's the key. So Buddha was always teaching how to move from dukkha to sukha, which is the sweet ride. And you know, the dukkha is just simply in his era, axle, they had carts, you know, were means of transportation. And the axle wheel fit into a hole. And if it was a poor fitting axle fit, that was a dukkha fit. And it would give a poor ride at worst, impossible to control, even worse, right? And to create sukha was just how to create that sweet ride. And it's an interesting thing for us to think of, you know. when we think about needing to get in touch with our center, and we think of how do you center, where do you picture, where is it that we center? So often we'll end up centering using our third eye or visualization. Here's the chakras. Where's the center? Is it up here? That's the transcendent, right? But the center is actually closer to our heart. How to get back down to the heart. And here we go again with the same theme that I think we are telling the story, all of us collectively telling the story. And this story is emerging more and more. The way to the center is not external. And we have to learn how to internalize. Adyashanti had a great quote. He said, when you blame somebody else for the reason that you're not happy, the keys for your happiness are in their pocket. Isn't that a simple, effective image? Where are the keys for our well-being? Where are the keys? Do they hold it? Do other people hold it? Or do we have to learn how to internalize and find our own center, right? Which is the key. So back to this period of time that we're moving in, that there's also another very fascinating aspect. Do you see this green triangle? I'm not very good at aiming that thing. That is called a grand trine. Equally powerful and harmonious as that tension is, but it's like a piccolo in the orchestra when the grand square is like the timpani and the brass sections playing, right? And then we have this grand trine in water. And so Neptune, Chiron in Pisces, Jupiter in Cancer, aren't we discovering that now that we have this leg of it, that we're hungry to have a personal, enriching life too? The phrase of Cancer that we use in astrology is, one of them is, I need. And then it makes us vulnerable as soon as we say we need. But if we provide that which we need, that nurturing, that's going to be an answer. Imagination. Neptune in Pisces. It's going to be here for a few years. Here's a quote we all like, we're quite familiar with. Imagination is more important than knowledge. And it's fun to look at Einstein's chart, by the way. I'll pull it up later. It has square Pluto, 1894. He's a paradigm shifter, right? Aren't we paradigm shifting? That's what we want to do. It's kind of colloquial talk. Paradigm has been around for a long time, that way of saying it. But I think imagination is more powerful than knowledge. What we know is only what we already know. Imagination could go anywhere. All of us have imagination. Does everybody here have a good imagination? Can I see? Good, good. I sit with people who sometimes say, I can't imagine. I don't have an imagination. And then they'll tell me the worst case imaginary fears that they're going through. You can make that crap up, but you can't imagine? Hollywood would be proud of that script. No one could pull off that much. Wow. So imagination we all have it, but it has been hijacked by the fear-making machine out there. And the fear-making machine out there, I'd say, when I thought about being in a revolution, I'm not going to revolt against my government. I'm not going to. But revolution against what? What is it that's oppressing me? What is it oppressing my friends? One of the things I think, being a revolution against fear and all those that would exploit us with fear. Now, I loved the work we did last hour of learning how to accept that also as part of our truth. And in oneness, what's not part of oneness? Everything except that stuff we don't like, right? Oneness is the good stuff, right? Well, of course, that's what we're learning, the ramifications of that. So this notion of being in a revolution, and we think of the Pisces energy, again, emotional, feeling, sensitive, quiet, silent, cellular cleverness. Or Rumi says, when that one is near, I should sell my tongue and buy 1,000 ears. He called it the guest, when the divine presence would be there. But it is that listening. So we talk about, in our modern era, self-transcendence, how to rise above. Self-transcendence to me is pulling up out of me and my story and my current agenda of why I'm not happy with how the world's unfolding today. And isn't that maddening at times when we're just kind of there? But how to pull up out of that transcendence helps, self-transcendence. But the shadow side of self-transcendence is self-denial. Many of us have grown up in a spiritual where we're not this, not that, not this, not that. We're working on defining ourselves in terms of what we're not. But self-denial, anybody with strong Pisces ever get into, or how about anybody here? Any self-pity? Well, you guys can recognize this. When I get into pity, and I do, every good 12th house person will make up reasons that didn't happen to justify that, going in there, feeling something like that. And every once in a while, I'll work with that. But I think when I'm sitting with it, I'll think, if somebody came up and pitied me right now, I'd find that disgusting. I mean, it's not, don't you agree? When you're there, you don't want somebody to say, oh, you poor, poor dear. Oh, heaven forbid. Learning about how to work with this caring. Our energy field goes far beyond our body. As we get up into the outer planets, and Neptune and part of this grand trine, do we know about the power of prayer? If one of our friends is ill, and we form prayer circles, and it helps. I mean, it's documented, research proven. Yeah, power of prayer works. What's the power of worry? It's the same principle, just employed in a negative way, right? So that when we worry for people that we love, we're essentially wrapping them in our fear. We're not able to deal with my own fear, so I'll name it as, I'm afraid. And then we send out that. Now, another important part of this Chiron, the sacred wound, the wounded healer, is also in Pisces right now with that. And to me, in mythology, Chiron was a young centaur, wounded himself with a poison-tipped arrow, and realized, uh-oh, poison, this could be bad. So he has to learn about healing, and that becomes his life path. He becomes a teacher of healers. Thus, the moral of our Chiron story in your own charts, we call them sacred wounds, or where we go through a wound, but the wound isn't the destiny, it's what we reach to for our healing, for that, right? Now, with Chiron, the wounded healer, the sacred wounds, would be a life void of soul food. Soul food is this weekend for all of us. This whole group knows soul food. We meditate, that's soul food. Things that nurture our soul, right? Or good music, or what is it that feeds us? And if you get out in that world that isn't involved, and some of that kind of mind-numbing energy that's going on that isn't soul-enriching, doesn't that create a hunger, like a wound? We're hungry for that. So we engage that. Now, the other piece of this is Saturn's in Scorpio, and it's going to leave. Saturn's been in Scorpio for 2 years. It finishes up this year. So wherever Saturn is moving, that's where we're basically getting tested. The test of Saturn in Scorpio is the test of intimacy. What we crave with Scorpio is intimacy. Behind this desire, the passion, that's the hunger for intimacy. Let's describe intimacy as being with somebody that's safe to drop all armor. They drop all armor, you drop all armor. What's born next? Emotional, physical, mental, spiritual. That's an intimate moment, right? But Scorpio is also the sign where we have all of our memories of every time we've ever been hurt, abandoned, betrayed, stepped on, cheated, done wrong. Now, has any of that happened to anybody in here? It's part of our story, darn it. It's not the fun part of the story, but it's part of our story. We have been stepped on. We probably stepped on a few people. We have cheated. We have been cheated. So we learn about what? How do we move? Forgiveness, right? And forgiveness doesn't work for me. I mean, it's a good entree. It starts the project. But energetically, if I forgive them, but I haven't done any work on myself, they're still not getting close. You've been there. You know what I mean. I'll forgive you, dear. Armored up. So forgiveness, we want to be large enough to character and spirit to acknowledge we blow it, she blows it, he blows it, and let people back up on the raft when we fall off, yeah. But then I find that the deeper work is when I'm willing to look at myself. We've all found this, right? To drop the armor if I ask what was my part. How can I be a better person? What was the shadow side of my character in that? Yes, she was being a jerk to me, but what was it in me that created part of that scenario? Why was that? What was my role? And as soon as I can find something within myself to work on, be a better, wiser, loving, more caring person, and less naive, because Scorpio will never let you go forward. Naive, right? But then it can release. And then just recently, I've been finding something even better with it. I just was on my own process, learning, probably many of you already know this, that if we can bless it at that point, then it doesn't come back. If we forgive, learn, and done with that stuff, it's coming back. You just signed up for that course, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105. Because all negative energy comes back to be resolved. That's what we're doing. But if we can claim that, if we can learn, see the lesson, and then thank the person for sharing life with us, they're one of our teachers, the people who helped us become who we are, even though we went through difficult encounters, then I think that can indeed liberate. And what is this theme that we're in? We're in the oneness era. And the oneness era has all kinds of ramifications for me as I contemplate it philosophically. As I was joking earlier, what's not part of oneness? Well, it's that separate part of my character, right? I have a awake self and a separate self. So the separate part is not part. And well, that wouldn't work either. Oneness is all-inclusive or it's not oneness, right? It's something else. It can't exclude. So as we've been working with all these emotional energies that we feel, how many of us have felt any kind of a hunger, an emotional hunger, to feel some of this energy, not just think about it? I've got the thinking disease. But I'm not proud of it, and I'm aware that I want to do a little exercise because there's really two different kinds of awakening that we can talk about. One is a disembodied awakening. It's easier to get into disembodied awakening. What is disembodied awakening? It starts with, we've all heard of neti, 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 right? We start learning about meditation and we say, I'm not my body. How do I know? Well, there's some place in me that's aware of my body, so I can't be it. I'm not my thoughts, because there's some place in me that's aware of my thoughts. I'm not this, I'm not that. And yet, this does help, and it will bring us to what I call that first stage, that disembodied awakening. But then, disembodied awakening gets kind of dry, and actually kind of lonely. Because we're learning to separate. Oh, none of this has meaning, only this, only spirit, all one. But then you're disengaging from so much of the day in order to get in touch with. And I found myself kind of laughing at myself when I wanted to get away from certain situations because I had to get in touch with the now. You guys don't mind if I cut this short because I want to go get in touch with the now. I have to leave now because I want to go get in touch with the now. That's what it started seeming like. Where am I creating these separations? These separations. What is not part of oneness? What is not part of love? What is not part of that? So this, I think the heart math people were here this weekend. I'm so glad. And so I'm just going to encapsulate some of the things that I found benefit from and share it with you, straight from heart math. I was going through one of those anxieties when I get up in the morning, and most every morning I have to refine my clarity. I mean, it's like I can get real clear, and then somehow all the wanting, hungry, judging voices wake up first. The brain and the heart give off a lot. The heart gives more information to the brain than the brain gives the heart. Do we know that? And it's not like we have to learn this is true. We know it's true. If you have an angry heart, how's your mind? You have an angry mind. If you have a closed heart, you have a closed mind. If you have a sad heart, sad mind. Glad heart, glad mind. Isn't it? It's the heart that sends the hormones that tells this biologically based unit up here to either be on alert or at ease or integrated with all the information that's coming in, right? It's the heart again. How to get into that. And that's it. I think that's what we're learning when we talk about, you know, can you just think and change your life? We've tried this, we've practiced this, but it's the heart that's the money maker. The heart's a good karma maker. The heart's it's good luck maker. When you say somebody has good luck, I bet you they're in their heart a lot. Somebody has good karma, I bet you they're in their heart a lot. They're always healthy, I bet you they're in their heart a lot. It's the heart that gives off, we talk about the electromagnetic energy field. I'm getting this in the heart math group, but I'll just pass it on. The brain gives off electrical magnetic energy field, and we know that that field can indeed create and life coalesces around the field. But the heart gives off 60 times more of the electrical component of the electromagnetic energy field, and from what I was studying, 5,000 times more of the magnetic field. That's what's going to affect things. So it's like it's being in that heart place. And we know this when we're not in touch with our heart. To me, that the shift is that we're moving from complexity to simplicity. We're moving from thinking it's all out and smarter and better into getting clearer. I remember a David Whyte poem when he was talking about with one of his Benedictine monk friends. He asked him, "Where's exhaustion come from? I'm exhausted." And his Benedictine monk friend says, "Exhaustion doesn't come from overwork. Exhaustion comes from lack of wholeheartedness." When we're not wholehearted in what we're doing, doesn't that just resonate? I mean, I got it. He said, yeah, if I'm wholehearted. And then it made me challenge myself in terms of, well, why aren't I wholehearted if I'm in this and I'm kind of tired? Is it that I really got to get present and be present here? Or is it that the container isn't going to hold you? I mean, sometimes you can't be wholehearted in some of the situations that we've created for ourselves, and we need to recreate for ourselves. In terms of how this affects other people, they talk about it as limbic resonance. That when you're in your place of your heart, and you're just centered, and you're interacting with somebody else, limbic resonance kicks in, where the other person is brought into coherence within themselves. Coherence is when our field is all operating together rather than fragmented as parts. Now, many of us are what I would call the silently awake. Probably many people have no aspirations of, I'm going to write books, I'm going to tell the world, I'm going to get up and talk. But, you know, the silently awake aren't inclined to teach, counsel, heal others. But just being in their presence, doesn't that do exactly that? Being around somebody who's awake. It does heal. It does. It's incredible. Just being in our heart, being present. And this, in terms of changing the world, it's, you know, I think it's going to be really hard as I figured this out, to get 7 billion people to agree with me, or any view. It doesn't seem to happen. How are we going to get this global unity if we have to get everybody to agree? Maybe we don't. Maybe it's simpler. Maybe it's that more helping each other awaken to their heart. And then we have awakened values as opposed to imposed values. Imposed values are the rules. You know, you'll don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. You'll be a good person if you don't steal, if you don't cheat, if you don't kill, if you don't, you know, we know the rules. Does it work? Does it bring, it sorta, it helps. But what happens when somebody just actually awakens and gets into their heart? What's their nature become? Byron Katie, one of our speakers, she's been here at the Wellness Festival. She had this beautiful description. She says, you know when somebody's in their heart because their nature is, I love, I care, how can I help? And isn't that a shift? I mean, it was like when you're around somebody, if everybody was in that state, I love, I care, I help, it doesn't matter if we all think the same or not, does it? Some of the things about the heart as opposed to the mind, you know, I'm a counselor, so I sit down with couples quite often, and people say, I just can't understand him. I would venture to say you can't understand anybody outside of our... No one's going to understand, really, the workings of another person, their psyche, their feelings, their emotions, how they put it together. Some of us are mental, some are emotional, some are fiery, we're all wired differently. I just don't understand him. Well, good, that's an accurate perception, I'd say. But the heart doesn't need to understand to love, does it? And when we get into disagreements with people in relationships over, but we have, I don't understand. But that's mental. Could you ever understand? But have you ever needed to fully understand somebody you love? When you love, it doesn't matter, right? So there's a whole different reference point to how this can work. But the heart, we've been romanticized with Valentine's Day. When you think about the power of heart, I'm always kind of wrestling with all those darn images that come up of Valentine's. It's kind of corny. But if you think of heart as it's your thoughts plus your emotions, that's your energy field. It's emanating from your heart. It's not something that you make happen. It's not something that, well, you work on yourself today and that'll happen tomorrow. No, it's happening today, now. That's how it works. Our energy field, and we can't ever even lie to our own energy field. It is what it is. It's our thoughts and our emotions together, integrated and expressed as the sum total of our energy field. You know, thoughts have energy, right? Have you noticed? Now the first part of that talk about the getting to the disembodied, I find that very powerful and helpful. When I get into the awakened place and I'm aware that if I can stay in conscious awareness, even while I go into one of my funky places, right? And we've all been in those places. But if I can stay aware, even while I'm wrestling with it, it breaks the trance. And then I get out of it quicker. And then you can actually ask, if you want, you can ask yourself, well, what was it specifically that I started thinking and or doing? I always like to say, but it's always thinking. What was I thinking that I was fine just a few minutes ago, and now I'm wrestling in the pits of my own whatever? What started it? And it's always pretty clear. Because it wasn't an hour ago, it wasn't, oh, I woke up that way. No, as soon as I started thinking like that, boom, I went in the energy tank. So as we learn that I think we're meant to live in a state of well-being. Harmony is the norm. Conflict is the illusion. Homeostasis is a principle that is that all organisms strive to be well and survive. But wellness is how we are designed to be. You have millions of years of evolution seeking wellness, knowing how to be well, knowing how to adapt. And this homeostasis is going to be measured where? Here or here? It's going to be measured here. And we could be aware of it throughout the day, all throughout the day. Can you feel your energy when it tightens? Can you feel your energy when it gets dark? Darkening, I call it darkening. When I'm just in my own head, I'm just meandering around in my 12th house playground in there. Some thoughts, I can feel my energy field get darker. a lot of thoughts, I can definitely feel a tightening, a restriction. And to me, those are just indicators of our little alarms of our being that wants to live in homeostasis, saying, would you quit thinking like that? You're hurting me. And I say gladly. But it's learning how to enter, how to disengage from some of those thoughts, isn't it, that are just continually. But don't wait for love. Looks like a bumper sticker. To live the life you love the life you live, that's how it works. You know, if we, I'll be loving if we have all these conditions, unconditional. To love the life you live is to put love in the life you're living. And anytime that we do it, and it's the same as creativity. We have so many artists in this community. When you pour creativity into a meal, that's love, right? Does it change it from just opening up a can of beans? Does it change it? It's not rocket science. It's what we put into it. We take the commonplace. You take a commonplace relationship, a story, and you put creative energy into it. And when you're coming together as heart to heart, the heart doesn't have expectations. And as we start learning how to accept. Now, when we were working with oneness this last week, I mean, this principle is like, well, what about all these hungry voices? Do you guys ever have hungry voices? I get hungry voices. And I translate, I need to be hugged. I need love. I need, you know, I'm sure you have your own voices. But but when I have it on a condition of another person, like my wife, I need something from my wife. Well, now I got to get on her schedule, and I can't be happy until it makes us very vulnerable, doesn't it? But how to find that place, when I was thinking about all these acting out parts of my character, what are they? All these stupid things that we do, dumb things that we do, aren't they really acting out of that separateness and that need just to be accepted? I think that's what it is. We as teachers figured that out. Well, that's acting out. They're not looking to break a window. They're looking to get your attention here. So when I think of this oneness, this is only something I'm working on, so I'm going to share a process with you rather than teach technique. I'm trying to be the voice inside me that can accept all the hungry voices for what they are. And to recognize that they've all been acting out hunger for that time of feeling separate. Separate from what? Separate from what? Well, as we wake up and we're no longer in the illusion, when we are awake, when we are in our awakened place, we've never been separate. Those have all been illusions. Those were all fantasies that we were acting out. I'm separate from God. I'm separate. Try it. Yeah. So I'm going to skip a few things here. And this is a good monitor to use throughout the day. Because we all believe this. I didn't say anything new to anybody here. We all know this. Energetically, we know this. But as a good monitor throughout the day, am I making my choices out of fear or love? What if they're good choices, but they're based out of fear? Well, I'm really eating healthy food because I don't want to get sick. Is that fear or love? Fear. It's fear-based. It's good aiming, but it's still fear-based. Or are you eating that healthy food because you love to feed your body and love it and feel healthy? Or is it a fear of? Do you see? So even if it's right behavior, if it's based on fear, it doesn't mean it won't do any good, but it sure does a lot better when we learn how to engage just that principle of love. Am I making my choices out of fear or love, right? It's a good monitor. And awakened values changes because our quality of involvement shifts from full to open. When we get around other people and we're full of our story and our needs and our this and our that, we have this. But when when we awaken and you find that sense of fullness and wholeness, it's always been there, it's still here, never left us. It's only our illusions that took us out of it, we're discovering. As we find that and we enter into that, then when we're in situations throughout the day, it's not what can I get, it's what can I add. I often think of that great principle. The only thing missing here is what I could be giving. When I'm in different situations, you look at different kinds of problems. The only thing missing here is what my offering is. We pray and we want to be lifted up, but are we willing to rise up and receive the whole power of all that awakening? And then this sense of purpose that we all crave. We want to know. We want to be aligned with the soul purpose. What's my soul purpose? What's my soul purpose? Well, all of nature is here in response to needs. Pay attention to what needs your love, what needs your help, what needs a little TLC around here. And thanks for coming today.